or less a following of the protocol that we're calling investigating nitrogen, the effect of nitrogen with Wisconsin fast plants. And so what that does is it plants fast plants in 3 different conditions, which is a no fertilizer condition, a phosphorus and potassium condition, so deprived of nitrogen, and then a full course fertilizer that gives nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And you can see those 3 responses right here. This is the well-fed one. And so I'm going to demo how to do that quickly in 3 little deli dishes. And so in the theme of everything being readily available, these are the same deli dishes you would find at your grocery store. You can buy a sleeve from them or at Walmart, though I hate to tell you to go there. So I'm going to start by threading in these wick strips. These are just made of felt, like felt puppets, or the felt that you would buy at a craft store. And I've just split a hole in the middle of it to make a strip, and that can thread right down. So now I have a planting unit and a reservoir unit, which is resembling what you guys have seen on your tables. And so the wick will carry the water from the reservoir up into the soil once that is all established.
I'll just interject, you can use macrame cord, and if you do use felt from like a fabric store, you need to rinse the sizing out of it, so it'll wick the water.
It's the what on it?
Makes it stiff.
Yeah,
Macrame
macrame cord.
cord at Goodwill.
Yep.
All the time.
And shoelaces.
Yeah.
I've made them out of shoelaces before.
Yeah.
So I've got my handy dandy watering bottle here. I'm going to start by getting my soil nice and moist. And so I'm using the tried and true soil method here, which is a peat-based seedling mix with a little bit of vermiculite mixed into it. You can be successful with soils that are readily available at gardening stores. We don't recommend planting it in dirt from outside because it's going to be too coarse and compactable for the roots to be able to penetrate through. Fast plants grow so quickly that they need to be able to get their roots growing fast, and if they're encountering resistance from the soil, it's going to slow them down.
In fact, this time of year is a great time to pick up the potting mix, because if you get seed starter, if you're going to do experiments where you're going to limit the nitrogen or the fertilizers that you're putting in, you definitely want to look for a soilless mix that isn't charged. Like, don't look for Miracle Grow's seed starter, because they charge it with some nitrogen, maybe a full, I don't know what spectrum of fertilizers they put in there.
For the fertilized end, are you just using 10-10-10?
Yeah, or 14-14-14 we kind of use, but yeah.
Just a balanced fertilizer, yeah. The fertilizer will mix to be about 100 parts per million nitrogen is what we balance it from. Okay, so if anyone wants to touch the soil, I encourage you to come up and do so. I've purposely wet it to the point where it's still really nice and fluffy. It feels wet to the touch, but if I squeeze it to compact it, it's not going to drip. And I can also break it up again. It's not going to stay in that ball, so it's really nice and easy to work with.
And moist enough, this is an important point. Another reason why it's important that it's moist is that you're going to, in the wicking system, set up capillary action, and the soil has got to be moist enough to participate in that.
Right, if anybody's ever watered a plant that you've forgotten about in your house and noticed that the water just pools on top, it's because when some soils become completely dry, they're actually hydrophobic until they have water incorporated into them again. White shirt is a bad idea. That's okay. So I'm also going to start by wetting these wicks, because the same thing holds. When they're completely dry, they're kind of resistant to having the water get soaked up. So I've got those nice and wet. Now I can start. So the protocol that I've briefly mentioned from Leaf.
I didn't actually give it to you.
Okay.
So,
Well, no, that's fine. If anyone wants it, it is available from Leaf or I. So the protocol has everything really simple for use in a classroom, and you can make it even between your students by using a measuring cup. And so I'm going to keep conditions the same except for the fertilizer in all of my trials here. So I'm starting with an even 1/2 cup of planting mix, And then in my full fertilizer group, I'm going to give it some fertilizer pellets. So I'll just sprinkle those right on top of the soil there. And then they all get another half cup of soil. And at this point is when, now that we have it in our planting mix, notice that I never pushed it down inside the container. I only dumped it in and shook it around, so I'm still making sure everything's nice and fluffy, easy for the roots. But at this point, now that we're in the container, I'm going to wet the soils so that they are, sometime, depending on how your students use the watering bottles in your classroom, you'll end up with some bottles that are sopping wet and some bottles that are completely dry. And so by writing a step of moistening into the protocol, you can try to keep it more consistent between your different groups and between everybody's different practices. So I'm going to work in the same order as I have here, which will be my no fertilizer group, my PK only group, and then my full NPK group. So notice that I'm going to give my no fertilizer group just water. And were I doing this by the protocol, I would be measuring the volumes of water and fertilizer that I was applying. So now I've got my other water bottle caps. I've got my PK fertilizer prepared. It looks like water, but I promise you there's stuff in it. And this is also readily available. We have got this from Amazon. It's a aquarium feed, actually. It's just a nitrogen-free PK fertilizer that you mix into water. And so then this is my NPK fertilizer. Again, commercially available. This is called Peters. You can buy it in a garden store or on Amazon. So you can see this one. And this is great for doing fertilizer intensity experiments also, because if you have more concentrated fertilizer, it's going to be more blue, so it's a very visual indicator for students that they're putting more or less of something into the environment. Alright, so I've got all my soils moistened and ready for seeds. So out they come. If anyone has never seen, if anyone would like to see Fast Plant seeds, has never seen them before, they're very tiny.
What else is in your bag?
So those are desiccating beads. Like Heidi mentioned, you can use silica. They come in little white packets in your shoes or in certain foods. And these are indicator ones, so the fact that they're pink means I need to recharge them. They're blue when they're ready to absorb moisture and pink when they are saturated. And so our protocol would recommend 8 seeds for something of this size. And so I'm just doing it rather hurriedly, but I'm dropping seeds around in a ring on the outside of the container. I'm not pushing them down into the soil or anything, I'm just letting them sit right on top.
When we're handing seeds out to kids, often what we'll do is make a roll of tape, you know how you put it on a note card, and then just put a little pinch of seeds on each roll. So then you just hand the note card to the table. And usually, I always have my students work in groups of 4 or 5 planting together in a container. And that way it was easy to pass out the seeds and also not have them rolling all over.
Yeah, and you as a teacher don't have to keep track of seeds all over your floor. And so at this point, the protocol would say you can continue on with this fluffy soil, and for the sake of continuity with the protocol, I will do that. You can also use vermiculite or perlite, a lighter substrate, to cover the top of your planter if you would like to. Vermiculite can help the plants breathe a little better because it's less compactable than the soil is. However, the plants will do just fine if covered in soil as well. And so, after about 14 days, this is what